I think that's quite a potent concoction when you think about the resilience that some of the people of Sri Lanka need to have when they face adversity, and haven't we seen that in the last couple of years? I think the fact that there have been so many diverse groups of people in Sri Lanka, and many people have it in their blood that they want to do better and they want to make their parents proud.
Welcome to another episode of Hatch, where we discuss Sri Lanka's potential to transform from a troubled nation to a startup nation, and in the view of investors, entrepreneurs. And today we're very fortunate to have Oliver with us, who is the CMO of IFS, a leading organization in Sri Lanka with over 3,000 people.
Not quite 3,000, but near enough.
Near enough. Okay. So Oliver, I think you're no stranger to Sri Lanka. You've been here quite a few times in the last, I guess, your career. And I think IFS has been one of those brands that has really believed in the Sri Lankan story. Can you tell us why? What does IFS see that many don't?
Of course. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. It's great to spend a bit of time with you. And yeah, our history from being in Sri Lanka dates back 25 years this year. So whilst I wasn't part of the company back then, clearly there was a great opportunity for IFS to diversify its presence, build out a global company. And we did an evaluation to look at which countries would make sense for us to grow in, knowing that we didn't want to go and invest from an outsourcing perspective, but we wanted to make a conscious decision to invest for a long term and build up a workforce of talented people who have got the right culture, who have got the right access to education, who have got the enthusiasm and appetite to get involved in technology. And whilst we looked and evaluated the different countries we could go to, Sri Lanka at that time was quite an untapped pool. And knowing the university structure, the investment that was being made at the time, it was a great move for us, because whilst most technology companies were looking at what we now reflect on as being the obvious choices of India or the Philippines or other places, which essentially they were going there for perhaps more fickle reasons of just trying to lower costs and improve efficiencies. Our approach was different in that, yes, clearly we want to achieve a very effective and operationally resilient operation, whilst at the same time trying to find those efficiencies. And I think that's really been the difference in our approach when we look at some of our peers and how they've globalized their workforce.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I think you really hit on a valid point where you say IFS really, one of the reasons they look at Sri Lanka is it's values driven, right? And you seem to be mission driven and values driven, which is one of the reasons why you selected Sri Lanka. It's not short-term gains, but there's a long-term view to be here. And it's one of the things that attracted even Hatch to kind of start working with IFS is, your long-term, vision. Is that, I mean, I know you personally are building a global brand. IFS is huge. Do those things come naturally to IFS, or is it something that you guys need to work on? How would startups or entrepreneurs, like looking at IFS as an example, build global brands which are mission and vision driven?
Absolutely. It's interesting in that question you ask a couple of things around values and also brand. And you can do as much PowerPoint and theoretic work on those topics as you like, but actually it's not what you write down that actually is what materializes. Your values and your brand are the DNA of you and your people, and what reflects the company that you are, i.e. the brand that you are, is how you operate and how you go to market. So I think, going back to your first question about why Sri Lanka, throughout the whole world, the type of people that we look to hire are people who have got and share similar values, that work ethic that is meaningful, that importance of being trustworthy, collaborating with colleagues and customers to go and get the job done, and having a similar work ethic and approach to life really actually builds the culture. So, whilst we're 5,500 people in employees and just shy of 3,000 people here in Sri Lanka, the same hangs true for if you're a startup. It's probably even more poignant that you get the right people around you, to ensure that as you go through those growth hurdles, that you're challenging each other, that you've got that openness in culture, that you're able to access the networks of the people that you're able to go and leverage off, so that you can build the environment for you to be successful. And I think startups and entrepreneurs really need to think about both the hard elements of building a business, but also the softer elements that will then give you that fully baked product that will enable you to rapidly grow and to generate that traction that you need to in the market.
Yeah, amazing. That's really good advice. You've been here obviously very consistently, but if you were to go back to your first few visits, or maybe even your last few visits, what continues to surprise you in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So my first visit to Sri Lanka was in 2005, and I was backpacking with my girlfriend and now wife around the country. And it was, I still have some very vivid memories of my time here. And we talk about the people and the approach to life, but those memories are of the people as much as perhaps some of the attractions that Sri Lanka has to offer. And so the people element, the softer element, is hugely important. So over the years, what I would say is that I haven't seen so much change in the humbleness, the ethic, the appetite, and the drive to do better. But certainly over the years, I've seen how that's progressed within the infrastructure of the country and how that's been developing. And infrastructure in terms of roads, buildings, and connectivity, but also infrastructure in terms of how companies are setting themselves up to be successful. And I think that that's quite a potent concoction when you think about the resilience that some of the team needs to, or the people of Sri Lanka need to have when they face adversity. And haven't we seen that in the last couple of years? And how resilient you need to be when you face those challenges, in order that you still drive the outcome and be that strong nation coming out of some of those challenges.
I think you really bring up that good point of resilience, right? And when I look at the startup ecosystem, I see that in plentiful, right? And I actually had people coming down from Silicon Valley, etc. And one of the things they value the most is really how resilient the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem has been. And they can it's almost tangible, kind of the hunger for change and hunger, to really build something, right? Is that something that we can leverage as a nation within IFS, outside of IFS, as startups? Do you think there's that is a rare commodity, or do you just see that everywhere? I'm just asking.
Well, you certainly don't see it everywhere, and I think that when you're faced with adversity, it's make or break, and I think you really see if people are in or if they're out at that point. And clearly, in every nation, in every group of people, nation, company, group of friends, you'll see people react to adversity in different ways. I think the fact that there have been so many diverse groups of people in Sri Lanka, and many people have it in their blood that they want to do better, and they want to make their parents proud, and they want to shine in their family and carry the name of their family moving forward. I think are all really healthy things for those for those progressive elements that you want to see in business, in personal life, and in society as a whole. So I think that there's definitely elements of culture and beliefs within the nation that have got a lot of really beneficial characteristics that will help drive growth moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. So I think in IFS, right? 2,500 people. I feel it kind of functions as a family. I was there. I had the benefit of visiting the 25th anniversary and seeing the show. People working together to create an amazing show and put together this amazing thing. Is that culture that IFS is trying to build? Is that kind of something that you guys work on actively, or is that something that naturally comes through with time?
A bit of both, I would say, Jeevan. There's certainly, I talked about trying to find people that fit the culture of what you want to build, and that certainly goes into the investments that we make at the grassroots level when we collaborate with universities and help with placements, and our people go in and teach, and then we think about graduates that we would hire and all of the different elements, and even getting involved with you guys at a grassroots level. So we think about all of those different elements, but equally you have to work at it. Now, we're really proud of the retention rate that we have at IFS, but like every business, not just actually in Sri Lanka, but across the world, these past few years of COVID and the economic headwinds that all nations have been facing have presented challenges. And you've got to think about how people as individuals are going to either bond to a culture or they're not going to bond to the culture. And perhaps there are other factors that will be swaying them to think about moving on or to trying something else. And the macroeconomic environment has had a huge sway, regardless of what effort we would put in, whether that's through the recruitment or whether that's through just the way that we engage our employees in how we retain and make sure that they have got healthy careers and opportunities to go and achieve. So it's very much front of mind for us, and I think that every healthy employer needs to think about that, but also then recognize the macro environment you're in. So, for example, for us, whilst inflation is high and people are getting higher job offers from other companies, there will be a point at which the culture will not have that much of a weighing factor if you're getting paid or getting an offer for a salary that is crazily an increase on what you earn today. And so I think every company has got to find the right balance. You want a loyal workforce to retain knowledge, but equally you want the ability to bring new blood in so that they can bring new ideas and new thoughts and new thinking. But at the kernel of it, you've got to have that culture and work on that culture to bring everything together.
Yeah, I always think that IFS is one of those companies that have found the balance right between culture and how to progress. So I just found it fascinating. So we've spoken about culture. Can we talk about the vision? Because I know Darren has this grand vision for where IFS needs to be. It's driving you guys to go to the next level. Tell me a bit more about the IFS vision and where you're going to take, or where you plan to take IFS in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, Darren has certainly set a culture right from the top that cascades all the way down. And I think that the thing that the management and our employees really gravitate towards is the fact that there is no ceiling that we can't break. And having gone through a transformation as a business, we don't sit here and think, well, we've done the transformation, now what do we do? Like every company that wants to grow at the rate that we aspire and we have been growing at for the last 5 years needs to keep thinking differently about what they've been doing. So the vision for the future very much is around, we have got an appetite to put IFS on the map, to own a category within the asset management and service management space, where we know we've got product capabilities that none of our peers can match, that we know that we can provide value in a quicker way than none of our peers can match, and that we've got a great opportunity to just dominate. So our vision for the future is to really ensure that people understand and can connect and see the value in what we can offer in a really rapid way. And so that's no easy feat, even when we're $1 billion business growing at 25% year on year. It gets harder as you get bigger. It's one thing as a startup if you're doing $1 million, 10 million, and then 100 million. Yeah, it gets harder every step up that ladder.
In this vision and getting there, let's talk about the technologies that drive it, right? And technology keeps changing. I think with ChatGPT coming in, with moving from specialized AI to generalized AI, blockchain, all these things must be kind of hitting you, and that change might be driving what is in, I guess, the leadership's like forethought of what technologies to start investing in and start looking at. How have you thought about incorporating these kind of new technology things that come in?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it in two parts, if that's all right. I'm going to talk about IFS and what we're doing from a product perspective, but then also being a marketeer, I can't not talk about the marketing element of that question as well. So as a company, like clearly these technologies are hugely exciting. And when things are very exciting, they're often very greenfield, and you've got to evaluate like how much value are we going to get out of this, and there's got to be an element of experimentation, creating a minimal viable product that customers actually will buy and they'll want and it will benefit them. And so we have set up both a culture in how we get our product and R&D team to think about those challenges, but then equally provide a dedicated labs team to really push the boundaries of what is possible, all with the confines of making sure that we are doing it not just for fun, but it's actually going to benefit our customers in the future. And that is obviously more subjective than it is objective. So there's an element of finding your feet in those scenarios. But very much actually, we've had a lot of benefit from being quite progressive in thinking about how technology can make an influence on our customers, whether that's done directly through IFS in our own development, or perhaps with a partner, or using technology that's already established. One example that I would give you is with COVID and the challenges that we had with people moving. One of the solutions that actually is the basis of the HatchX incubator that we've got with you is around planning, scheduling and optimizing your workforce and your field workers, which clearly you can't send people around when there are bans preventing people from moving. So we quite quickly worked with a partner using technology that essentially would share through AR, augmented reality, so that you would be able to see what a field worker was doing, and perhaps where we had customers who would normally send an expert with the right qualifications and training and expertise to a location where they had to, service an asset. We provided the technology using augmented reality to the person who was local to the asset, but perhaps not trained, but they could share what they were seeing back with somebody that was trained and an expert in that area. And we've had a number of cases where customers mobilized their workforce very, very quickly so that they weren't having any downtime and that their assets were well serviced. And that was a really good example in a very real scenario of how having the right approach and the right openness in your tech stack to be able to move really quickly to an environment when it presents you some level of challenge, to ensure that you're delivering for your customers in a very operationally efficient way. So that was one thing. We called it the remote assistance capability. So yeah, generally speaking, we like to spend time and invest in technologies where we can see there being some value for our customers. And whilst we might experiment initially outside, we quickly want to roll that into our core product, which now we publish every 6 months. Which means that customers can get some benefit from it.
That's amazing, because that's a great example of kind of your MTP, what I call MTP, which is also your vision, which is your moment of service, right? So it really creates that moment of service.
Yeah, I always get told off for talking too much about our things that we have come up with that are very IFS-y, but this is a belief that we have, that every customer that we work with, they want to differentiate from their peers. And just knowing the increase in focus on service, both from a consumer level, where we as consumers have just got higher expectations of how the companies we work with deliver service to us, but then on the other side of this perfect storm, you've got businesses who are looking to differentiate off service and generate new revenue lines from service. So with this perfect storm of service being so hot, knowing our capabilities with planning, scheduling and optimization, and our broader impact that we can have with our tech stack, it's a really meaningful message for both a company who is service obsessed already, but then perhaps a very commodity driven company who's thinking of, how do I innovate? I'm a hose manufacturer. How do I innovate, and how do I deliver great moments of service to my customers, because I want to generate new business lines and I don't want the next company eating my lunch. So that really resonates.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you were going to talk about how technology is going to be used in marketing
as well. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So clearly, the ability for us to use more digital tools in marketing is a compelling proposition. Both knowing that prospects and customers do their research online before they buy anything these days. There are stats from McKinsey that talk about 70% of your prospects have done an evaluation on vendors before they even come onto your website or pick up the phone to speak to you. So making sure that you've got that presence, not just online, but digitally, and in the right places, so that you can educate people embarking on a customer journey at the right time, at the right place in time, with the right message, is hugely important. So I'm a big advocate of us using technology to ensure that we, one, understand where people are on the journey, that we then deliver the right message at the right time in the right way, and that could be through a variety of different forms, and ensuring that you can then effectively speak to that prospect in a language that's meaningful for them.
That's very interesting. So one of the things we tell startups is, probably, the world doesn't care about your product or service, etc. What people have jobs to get done, and you need to put yourself and position yourself in where that job needs to get done, where it's convenient that you kind of like connect with your product and service to deliver that job. How does IFS think about that? How does IFS think about, okay, the job that I need to get done, and then how do you connect? And then how do you market in that right moment?
I mean, you're 100%. There's nobody sitting there thinking, I want to go and spend money. Like, why would you do that? You'd think I've got a business problem that I need to get over, or I see a market opportunity that I want to capitalize on, or I see some way to differentiate from my peers where I can take market share. Those are kind of the thoughts that you would tap into. And by having that level of conversation with a prospect, you're not talking at a commodity level of like, replace this one piece of software with this other piece of software. You're talking to actually not just heartstrings, but actually what's meaningful for the business. So, truly understanding your customer is, for both a startup, for a big business, is hugely, hugely important. And, when you think of a customer, it's often not just one person in a buying cycle either. There are many people who would normally, advocate, approve, probably be detractors in a buying cycle, that you've got to think about engaging with as part of that marketing journey with a prospect. So, we very much think about, how do we empower the advocate within a buying process? How do we educate a detractor? Sorry, not but there are distractors as well. how do you educate a detractor so that they don't feel so adverse to change? How do you empower a CFO or a financial director to feel comfortable signing a check and ensuring that they're not taking a chance, and that you're going to be around as a startup in the years to come? And those are all just basic sanity things that you need to think about if somebody's opening up their purse or picking up their wallet. So I think about all of those dynamics with our marketing and making sure we speak to the right people in the right way. And there are so many pieces of technology now in the MarTech world that are doing amazing things that help companies like us. And you talked before about ChatGPT being something that's kind of on fire at the moment, and it absolutely is of interest. I also look at that with the appropriateness of how you want to embrace something like ChatGPT, which for us could be hugely interesting for perhaps researching and understanding the customers and the prospects that we go after. Whereas the obvious use case in the marketing world would be, I'm going to get ChatGPT to write a blog, and that can be quite a dangerous road to go down, because do you want people to realize that what you're churning out and you're giving as an opinion is not actually your opinion? Dangerous road. Do you want Google, who will quite quickly pick up on the algorithm, to start demoting your content because they recognize it comes from an AI bot? These are quite real issues that, as a marketing leader, I think about, because if our rankings on Google go down, we're not on page one and at the top of page one for the search terms I really care about, that's a problem.
Just probably something that you could probably quickly implement, and because ERPs are a great source of data, connecting ChatGPT to that great source of data, and being, as a business owner, being able to ask questions about what is my sales.
You're teasing out some work that our my colleagues are looking at the moment. So
yeah,
noted, and it's a very good idea.
Yeah,
So look, people are time poor and knowledge hungry, and if you can use technology in order to provide that level of intelligence through to the person that needs it in a quick way, then that's obviously a good win.
So one last question. I heard from a little birdie that you have your own startup or are investing in startups.
I had a start. I was involved in a startup
Okay.
before my time at IFS. So
Do share the story with all our podcasters.
So as part of an MBA that I was doing at London Business School, we were part of a class that was run by a great lecturer who also lectured at MIT, and he challenged the class in our last part of that elective to come up with a business idea that we would then have to pitch to investors, like real investors. I consolidated with another lady. She had a great idea. I can't confess it was my own idea. And the concept was that if you've got a pea brain like me and you go to an event, you often forget the names of the people that you have a genuine conversation with. But a week, a month, half a year later, you might remember that conversation and want to look them up. So the basic premise of the idea was to come up with a way that you would note those genuine conversations and then be able to connect through LinkedIn. So I was lucky enough to go through a process of going through an incubator, actually with Deloitte. We were part of the Google accelerator as well, which was really good, and we raised a bunch of money, and it was very successful. But I chose my path to go and work for IFS, and I was at that crux of a point where, what do I do? And it was a great experience for me to go through to just get an understanding and an appreciation of how people, if you're asking somebody to part with their own money, what do you have to persuade them? And there's an art of marketing in that. So I've certainly taken some lessons and learnings from that whole part of my life.
Oliver, it's been terribly fascinating talking to you and understanding all of this. But we are running out of time. But we do welcome you to come back again to Hatch, and I think you're always welcome here.
Thank you. And you guys keep up the good work. It's just been amazing. I mean, I visited Hatch, I think, for the first time in 2018, and just seeing how much progress, not just in terms of the physical building, but just the buzz in the ecosystem actually is something that I think you guys should be really proud of. And it's lovely for us now to have a partnership with you that is just seeing the ecosystem grow and build and accelerate even further.
Yeah. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you so much. Blessing to have you here. Thank you.